What's going on, everybody? It's Ron Brown, LMT, the People's Fitness Professional, alongside my co-host,
Mikey Fever.
and this is a New Yorker's Perspective
Yeah.
Martial Arts, the Martial Arts Edition. The
Uh-huh.
first Martial Arts Edition we did with the God Supreme from the 5% Nation. This is our second one. The martial arts gate is open, if you will, now.
Yep.
So now that world we're going to cover a lot more often if you guys are interested in combat martial arts. So I want Royce is my instructor. I've been around Royce now, I think 8 years, 7, 8 years or something like that.
Just about, yeah.
Yep,
Since
7, 8 years.
2017.
Yeah, yep. And I've learned Kali from different instructors over the years, for years. Nomad Kali has been the place I've been going off and on for since like 7, 8 years ago now. And Voice is my family. And the reason why is because Royce is down to earth. Royce knows his stuff. Um, and Royce is dedicated to the art. Royce is a true martial artist, and who better to talk about Pekiti-Tirsia Kali than Royce of Nomad Kali. So that's why he's on right now. How's it going, Royce?
That was beautiful.
Doing good. Thank you. And buttering me up really good. I'm glad I paid him well. No, seriously, when we all have our passions, right? So whenever we find something we want to dedicate to it, sometimes we walk away from it, but we find ourselves going back to it, or at least thinking a lot of it and then going back to it. Correct?
Correct.
So this has been something I've been passionate about since I was a little child, and I started very early, and I turned 48 in July. So it's been 43-ish years of training,
Yeah.
but the last 25 has been very focused on Pekiti. I still practice and train other things. I'm always open to learn from anybody else because I don't know it all. Like you said, I'm only 48, not 148. Don't have enough of the experiences to claim to be a supreme grand poobah of anything. So, I'm always a learner, right?
Yes,
Like
sir.
as the saying goes, perpetual white belt mentality. You gotta always think that there's more. The glass is not full yet.
Right, right. So now, break down your history in the arts. Where are you from? First of all, where are you from, and your history in the art.
All right. I was born and raised in Queens. Well, born in Queens, raised in Rockland County. When I was about five and a half, 6-ish is when I started getting big into kung fu theater. The karate movies, kung fu movies, stuff like that. And then my mother was already taking taekwondo because my father, the ages of no cell phone, right? And you can't even get to a phone to call 911, right? So my father was like, learn how to protect yourself because I'm not going to be there all the time to be there for you because we work two different places. So she started taekwondo before I did, I believe around when my brother was born, because my brother is 1973, and she was doing it for quite some time already, and then she became a black belt sometime during the time I started, like I don't know, within my first year. And so I started taekwondo, and then of course with friends I started learning boxing, kickboxing, karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, kempo, wrestling. Over the years, always training with friends, kung fu, some long fist, whatever. Because after I was taken out of taekwondo because of money, you know, It's three people going, my brother, my mother, and myself. It gets expensive,
Yeah.
and I understand that. I don't fault my mother. We practiced for as long as we could. And we moved from there. And some of the tenets that I grew up with, that's stuff that stuck with me at an early age, not just the early early days of Catholicism, Christianity, that and of being a Filipino family, which is very strict, very religious, and you know, very superstitious. The stuff I learned guided me throughout growing up. I don't like dealing with bullies. Try to bully me, I don't care. I'll do something. Back then, I'd bite you, bite your finger. Yeah, we grew up. Then my friend Mananoodle Steve and my other friend Mananoodle Vic, when we started Kali together, years later, back in like around 97, 98. Actually, Victor came around 99, 98, 99. Um, our instructor, Mandala Virgil, was the one who taught us Pekiti. He also taught us Kaji Kambo and Shingi. And I had already practiced other arts between the Taekwondo and then, but more informally. So I never considered myself a martial artist. Because for me, being a true martial artist is if you eat, sleep, breathe it. Not okay. I go to class once or twice a week, maybe 3 times if I'm lucky. Get an hour here, an hour there. That's to me, and then I don't. This is not to fault anybody who does. Because life is life, family is family. Our situations are what they are, and you're free to consider yourself however you feel like. For me, I didn't feel like it. Now I feel more like it because this is, we went full time in 2019, and and this is what I do. This is my job. This is my stress relief. This is my culture. This is my life, and that's a brief synopsis of from Taekwondo through Kali. I was never ranked in Taekwondo, by the way, because I was pulled out early. But we're doing good. I was supposed to. I would have gotten my Boldan belt, but I would have to stay there for about 40 years until I hit 14 before I could even test for a black belt. Nowadays, you got black belts at the age of 9. No, yet traditionally you're not. You couldn't be a black belt until you're 14 or 14 and up. Some school in 16 and up. So that's the thing. I didn't get actually the person who eventually gave me my black belt was Grandmaster Paul Dyer. I earned my black belt in Kaji Kembo under him. He recognized my work and my training, and that's always part of it. I didn't continue it because I'm kind of really deeply rooted in Pekiti right now, and right now I'm training with Tuhan, Ramel Tortel, and actually going by the original rankings, like Tuan basically means grandmaster. He's the nephew of Grand Tuan Supremo Leo Tigahe, who brought the art to the U.S. to New York, and he brought up Kali FMA in the East Coast. He's one of the most prominent icons in that. And in 2019, he was recognized along with Danny DeSanto, right? If anyone knows who Danny DeSanto is, he's the he's friend and training partner and trainer and teacher to Bruce Lee, because he both taught Bruce Lee and learned from Bruce Lee, and they trained together and became friends. And they were also friends with Leo. He was also friends with Leo Gaye, that they got the Lifetime Achievement Awards from Black Belt Magazine for their contribution to the art. They couldn't pick one or the other, so they honored both of them. And I was able to go to Vegas to be there for the seminar that was part of it. I couldn't stay for that event because time constraints, but I was still working at my other job. But yeah, it was a great honor to be there and to see them again. And there's just so much in art, And the way I look at it now, I don't get stuck in semantics. I like to look at everything's Kali to me. You teach me capoeira, it's Kali to me. You teach me Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's Kali to me. All right. It's not to insult it. It's an absorption of understanding of the mechanics that we do.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes, sir. For me, it does. So
I have a question. Oh, I was gonna
Yeah, go.
um for my educational sake and for the viewers, what is Kali?
Ah, very good question. All right. So, for those who don't know, Kali is a terminology used to describe one of the terms they use to describe Filipino martial arts. There are a number of terms. Um, the three most prominent terminology in Filipino martial arts. One's Kali, one's called Arnis, and one's called Etiquette. Now, there's kind of a tumultuous headbutting, clashing of ideas on what's the original terminology. The reason why I can't, I not, and I know it sounds arrogant for me because I'm American born versus being Filipino, because I grew up for years wondering, kind of being snobbed by the Filipinos that were born over there and they're here, that I'm not Filipino enough. Yet I eat more Filipino food than most of them do. They want to eat their burgers and whatever, and their McDonald's and Wendy's and whatnot. And I train in a Filipino martial art while they shun the Filipino martial art, which is kind of backwards. You know what I mean? Kali. The reason why I look at Kali as an original term because the other two are rooted in Spanish. And what did the Spanish do to the Philippines? They knocked on our doors 300 years ago and said, "Hi, we're here to stay forever, and give us your children and everything else and your livestock." And what do invaders do when they enter any culture? They destroy the old culture. They don't want you looking on the old ways. They want to convert you to their ways. That's why there are very militant spread of Christianity. Not everybody did that, but the Spanish did. You look at the transatlantic route that they did between the Philippines to the Caribbean areas.
Yeah.
South Central America. There's actually a very there's a what's called on YouTube. There's a video of Dana Santos presenting at the Smithsonian and talking about that and how the Spanish would be, because Spain is a small country even back then, so they would hire mercenaries and to people to row the galleons were slaves. So they're there to get the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Incans, the Tainos, right? Row the boat to the Philippines. Okay, you're half dead. Get the hell out. We need new slaves. Slap them on. Filipinos, row the boat back. They're half dead. Kick them out. Whoever survives. So, that's why it's weird things like some of the first people to touch ground. Actually, the first people to touch ground in California on the West Coast were Filipinos, because they were basically being, kind of pushed off by the galleons. Okay, you guys go check out the land, make sure no one's going to attack us, and then we're going to go in there. So the first people to literally touch ground on California soil were Filipinos. And one of the first settler people that jumped ship from Spanish also were Filipino settlers that got to Louisiana, and they stayed in Louisiana and had amongst the people there. So Filipinos have been in America for a long time too. Kali is I digress. Kali, I look at it as original because Kali means sword. Well, Kalis means sword. And when you look at Kalis, Kali, I look at Kendo, Japanese fighting style, or Kenjutsu, way of the sword. Ken is sword, depending on how you write, it's either sword or fist. So Kendo, way of the sword, or Kenjutsu, sword techniques. Same thing. Kali, this is the art of the sword. And I personally look at it multiple layers. I'm kind of not hopeful, but if you go way back during the time like before Spain and even before the 100 years of the Muslims that invaded before them, the Philippines was part of, the Srivisayan Empire, part of Majapahit, going all the way up towards India en route from I think Alexander the Great, and that's where some people think the art kind of came down from. And there's talks about, if you look at Muay Thai. Muay Thai is a sport. Muay Thai comes from Muay Baran, the art of 9 limbs, not the art of 8. And that's the original art of Muay Thai is Muay Baran. And in Muay Baran, they have a double sword style called Kabi Kabrong. Kabi, Kali. The word for source is keres, or we call a wavy sword called the kris. Keris is a wavy sword in Indonesia. And
When you connecting the words, the etymology, you trying to
right,
go to the root
it
word.
means sword. You look
Yeah.
at guru, right? Guru means teacher, right? In
Mhm.
in our art, guru means teacher or enlightenment or whatever, right?
Mhm.
In Muay Thai, your coach is known as a crew, KRU, crew, guru. You look at, remember back in the day with kung fu, gung fu, which one's the right one? It's there's of course localized, like you said, ways of speaking that changes things. The interpretation of the words, and even the words in the ancient Filipino script was based on Sanskrit, called Babayan. So it's related to Sanskrit before in Spanish, kind of like went. And actually, in Spain, there's a book in Spanish, around late 1500s, 1560 something. It was like a dictionary, and they called Kali the fighting art of the Filipinos, but it's spelled Cali, because the way they hear Kali, like as in California, C could be C could be S, right? C could be ch, depends on where it's come from. So the Western perception of the terminology of how they heard it was with a C. So I've been trying to find that so I could kind of put it out there, because there are certain historians, so to say, that try to say, no, Arnis the first one. No, Arnis could not be the first one, because the words literally come from Spanish terminology. Spanish only controlled the island for 300 years, and it's proven that we've had our art. We've even had metallurgy, swords, shields, spears, bows. Well before that, we've been dealing with pirates, marauders, for centuries before the Spanish came. It's interesting.
Okay. So that was a
That
great
was
breakdown.
yeah.
Great breakdown of the history. Now, can you break down, the different types of Kali and the parts of the Philippines these different types come from?
And so every island, freaking. If you're familiar with, so for those who don't know, a little history. Philippines is an archipelago, the largest archipelago in the world. It's an island chain. Uh, Depending on tide, it's around 7,500 islands or 7,200 on high tide. So some are underwater at that time. Um, for the most part, most of the larger islands that can support people in life have a tribe or have had tribes. So people have developed their form of fighting over years, especially out of necessity when you have people trying to steal from you or enslave you. Filipino tribes would fight and enslave each other over the years, just like any tribe versus tribe situation, right? Tribalism, and then of course Spanish came, and then they forced people to do whatever. In terms of what's surviving, there's a lot of family-based arts. Some after COVID and now Zoom and people starting to come out, we're starting to see more and more um, arts that are from family systems. One that's gotten good traction recently is from Grandmaster Bernas, Grandmaster Bernas and Bernas Staccato. He really nice guy, really cool dude. Um, Older, and he started lifting. He's looking pretty jacked for someone of his age too, so that's pretty cool. And he moves good. He's from um, Negros, also the same place that Grand Tuhan and Tuhan are from. And so there's a lot of different groups. One of the most popular groups is Doce Paris, or the 12 Fathers, and they developed their own style of Arnis back then. People like Grandmaster Rodel Dagook from Batangas is excuse me, no, he's Grandmaster Rodel is those originally uh, Princess Modern Arnis. Sorry, but one that's another one. Modern Arnis, Combatan, and Arnis de Mano with. Doce Paris. That's one of the some of the more well known and some of the older groups that's out there, along with Pekiti-Tirsia and Serrata Estrema, which became very popular out in California and West Coast. Serrata is very big over in there, and then they created their groups, and Serrata has just developed over there. And it's hard to say which groups are more popular, but there's also Abenico Tres Puntas with Grandmaster Rene Tongson. He's a great person, and he does classical Arnis. So I would imagine classical Arnis probably had. I never asked him. I should look into it, but because what you just asked me, that might have some connection to 12 Doce Paris. The Cañetes are known for Doce Paris, Cocoy Cañete. Um, I have not met any of the senior Cañetes yet. I have one of my friends who's been to the school and he grew up here. He's a black sheep, Rodney Cañete. I met him back in like 2012ish. Mananudlo Vic. Back then, we went to a tournament and he broke all of our sticks on Rodney in a sparring match. Um, Rodney's good. He's very good, but he recently did some of the Kali with us, Pekiti-Tirsia. He came with me to the mastery camp in October in the Philippines, and he was just down. He was loving it. He actually went back again for the tribal camp this past March. He's been something comes up. He kind of goes back. It's cool, but yet he's honoring his Cañete background with Doce Paris. So it's a lot. It's a very vast system and group out there, and then you have breakoffs of groups or other people that have their own groups like lightning, lightning scientific. You look at some of the breakouts of people who've trained in multiple arts and they broke off and did their own thing, like Sayoc, Atiendas. They have history with PTK, but so you can see some of the material is there, plus other stuff that they put together and made their own thing. FCS, Filipino Kali, Filipino Combat Systems. They again they have a connection to both Sayoc and Pekiti. Really, I look at it like really cool that they, even though I know there's some kind of bad blood, but they develop their own thing, and as long as it works, that's all that matters. They propagate, they make something happen, and whether I wasn't there, I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I look at the final outcome. If you can propagate your art earnestly and honestly without having to put down other people and shun who and where you come from, then you're good. If you can be honest and say, well, I did this, I got this from there, I think that's a great thing. Conversely, if you want to talk smack about the people where you got it from and everything else and whatever, and don't want to admit that you got something from them, that's something you should really look at yourself You know what I mean? That's if you claim to be a martial artist, we are supposed to hold ourselves to a higher standard versus the average Joe.
Right.
So we have to be on an elevated level, not just skill wise or physically wise, but not so much conscious level, but just character level. Gotta be a better person, and that's a big thing. Honor, integrity, discipline, respect. Code of Bushido, same thing. You look at um, and any martial art worth its salt in both skill and respect is because they also embody those beliefs. Does that make sense?
That does.
Uh,
Now, I want to ask about this now. So Sayoc. So from what I learned from Pekiti-Tirsia, so just a brief history with my brief Pekiti-Tirsia history with me is I started off with Guru Eddie Hunt, Guru Eddie Hunt under oh my God, why am I forgetting this brother's name?
okay.
Uh, what's the name of it? What's the name of this brother's name? Ah, it's Pekiti Tertia, but it's like more like combat tactical. Man, he's one of the big guys over there. Oh man, it's just slipping my mind. It's so crazy. But anyway, uh, under Guru Eddie Hunt, rest in peace to Guru Eddie Hunt. I learned from Guru Eddie Hunt in New York City. I stayed with him for a couple of years, and what I learned from Guru Eddie Hunt in Pekiti Tertia in the city was that Pekiti-Tirsia is it's more athletic. You got to really move around. Um, you don't really want to be touched by the knife. Uh,
And it's not a
and
pleasant feeling.
huh?
It's not a pleasant feeling, right?
Not a pleasant feeling, right? You want to kind of go in and then get out of there. It's a lot of footwork. Um, it's the drills that I was learning down there. It's more. It reminds me more of like football drills, right? Like football footwork drills, and it's more dynamic. Pakiti Tertia, and then when I went to oh my God, it's too late. I guess. What's the name of the brother? That I AK.
Yeah, come
Now
on,
now with AK, it was footwork, but it was less dynamic. It was more close quarter, and it was still PTK. And with you, it's like a blend of the two types of instructors. Like so with you, I learned it's dynamic, and then also it's close quarters at the same time. So um what would you say Pakiti Tertia is as far as footwork and movement versus a Sayak and Arnis?
All right, so I have not seen too much of the Sayoc material, except for some of the knife work and some of the stuff you see like in like The Hunted with Benicio del Toro and Tommy Lee Jones. That movie, The Hunted, good movie by the way. They did a modified 12 attacks that for the movie itself, and Sayoc were the people that were brought in for it, and that helped put their name out there, which is really good. And I have not seen them do footwork, but I imagine that you know that Chris Sayoc and his father, they did the proper of sidestepping, cross stepping, ducking, some of them, because that you can not want to be a part of a group of an art all you want, but that doesn't mean you throw away what works.
Right.
Every art has it to some degree. Sometimes people just don't realize it that it's there. Like when I connect the dots with boxing, right? You see the movements, some movements right there in boxing, some of this Muay Thai. So Kali is very dynamic, extremely dynamic, because you kind of have to move dynamically to avoid getting slashed up by a sword or stabbed by a knife. Kali works. So, in my personal observation, in the way I look at PTK, some people say no, PTK is only this or PTK is only that. It's like no, no. PTK works 4 ranges long, 5 ranges exact. Uh, no, 4 ranges, right? 4 ranges. So you have long range. So you got kicking, striking, or at full range of your stick barely touching your opponent. Medium range, where you kind of clash weapon to weapon. And that's also fist to fist. I could punch you, you could punch me. Um, Close range is when you get, you can get to grappling in a throw, but extreme close range is when you are truly grappling, Dumag, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu material, where you're just body on body kind of wrestling. So you have long, medium, close, extreme close ranges, and each one has their purpose. We train multiple weapon categories: spear and staff, you know, um, shield, sword, stick, knife, double knife, karambit, um, flexible weapons like sarong, and of course firearms or projectile spear, throwing spear, bow. Some people train bow. In modern days, firearms or throwing a knife or an axe. We also you have axe material as well. You know, and yeah, it's interesting because if you look up some of the designs of axes from the Philippines, they're like the ones who carried these axes were the Igorot and people related to the Igorot. The Igorot tribe are headhunters.
Wow.
Yeah, so and that's part of the culture. So we cover multiple levels of weapons. We cover multiple ranges. Footwork is all about positioning yourself. Hit but don't get hit. Some people, it's not like back in the day. Um, you know, early pugilism, even pre Queensberry rules, where you stand toe to toe and just slug it out. Which actually comes from weapons, sword and shield. So this was my shield. Here's my sword. I'm striking with my sword here. So that's where that originally came from, right? And if you go before pugilism, before that, you have like pancration and early days of pancration, striking. You had punches, you had forearms, you had elbows, you had headbutts, you had bites, you had knees. It was brutal, you know. With
I
the
have, I have a question to ask. You mentioned foot movement formation. Does it goes like in three, like a triangular formation, like how you move
so,
around?
so yeah. So at the core of it, and and there's a whole thing about how I've rearranged things to train beginners before going into ranking. So I give a whole basis for fundamentals because there are people trying to get into this and never trained anything at all. But everything comes down to one angle, down, one diagonal, two diagonal, and a lateral and a vertical. When you move them around, you have triangles all over the place, right? Your triangle is only one component of it, but whether you look at the X, right? How many triangles you have there? One, two, three, four, right? Once we add the verticals, then it splits it some more. It turns into eight triangles. An octagram, so to say, right? You take and you see that in our in the Filipino flag. There's a symbol of the flag, right? Has a sun in it. The sun has 8 rays, which represents the eight provinces of the original province. Excuse me. Yeah, 8 original provinces of the Philippines, and that also represents the what's called the cardinal directions. North, south, east, west, northeast, northwest, southeast, southwest. So when you look at that, and literally lays over, because uh, Rob, Ron. So you do tempo, right?
No,
Goju.
Goju karate
Yeah.
and Muay Thai.
Right. So there's and people who know Kempo. Kempo has a similar symbol where you take an octagon, and when you draw the lines, you have the same 8 angles, and then it also formulates 8 triangles. Is they call that universal pattern of movement. Now, of course, what about then? There's also your straight lines and your circulars. Again, the sun represents the circle as well, not just the straight lines. So it's all angles, angle, 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 angle. Yes, triangle, because there's me versus you, and then where I'm going to move next. If I attack you and move offline, right? I went from my line to your line and step out. I created a triangle. And then, of course, where we're striking, they say one of the ways is when you see the triangle between you and your opponent, that's just when an open triangle, open triangle meaning like a V, right? There's no top, right? This is a one triangle, right? So if our bodies bridge together and there creates an open triangle of sorts. Closing off that triangle is your attack line. That's one of the aspects that has been taught in Pekiti. Um, Other aspects is that those lines bisect. When we talk about bisecting the line, we intersect. One line connects to the other. So this way, when we intersect like so, whether it's diagonal or vertical, right, we create what's known as a window of opportunity. That's our entry points to go in on an opponent, whether it's going to be disarming or wrist locking or control, throw, or straight line attack. So there's all this level of
Opportunity, looking for the window.
yeah,
I was gonna say because that now you mentioned with the whole Filipino tactic. In much respect, I see reason why I say the 1, 2, 3 because I see that Manny Pacquiao uses that tactic when he's boxing the ring from all angles. Like his punches be so
yeah,
unorthodox. Like they be like, yo, he just hitting from all angles. Like he'll be right here 1 minute, then he's from the side. Like the person is straight ahead with him, but he's attacking from the side. And he's coming from here with it. He's jumping here, then he's coming back in the middle again.
yeah. Uh, Honestly, Mike, I would love to believe, and I've never, with one day if I would ever meet the man, it would be really awesome.
Yeah,
Personally, I think it was robbed on a couple of occasions. Well,
yeah.
more than a couple. We all know, but
Mhm.
we'll bring that's a whole other discussion, right? Um,
I'm lost with
but
that one, but okay.
there's, uh, but his footwork has always been very dynamic, right? The
Yeah,
only other person who moves like that is like Lomachenko.
yeah.
Lomachenko, he did dance. They had him learn dance when he was young, so he's
Oh,
light on his feet and moves around, and he uses good strategy. He hit here, up, 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 and before he throws the next move, as you are covered up, he go bum, 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 cover up. He moves around you, and then when he tries to hit you where here, you're not there anymore, and then you're taking a shot over here. It's
yeah,
dynamic, and that's how I kind of. It's hard to do that in a fight with weapons
yeah.
because you have to be very courageous to get up close and block someone's view and then move out of the way and maneuver without losing your arm. You know,
That's true.
it can be done, but that's because of training and development because you have to be willing to take this out arm and bring back. Otherwise, it goes loop. And then call you righty all day long.
So now that you explained the difference as far as like the dynamic movements and things, what about Arnis? Like Arnis seems to be, you know, the and Belitnowak, like
Oh, yeah.
Belitnowak.
So, all right. So, Arnis, they're dynamic in the body mechanics, movements, especially with their abnico striking and moving around here.
Mhm.
But I've watched certain people move around, so some of them have good. They do footwork drills. Very common is a triangle throughout the Philippines. Very common triangle, open triangle, X pattern, right? But there's the patterns, right? So what asked Ron, I separated the patterns because there's a you know, forward triangle, reverse triangle, open, close, right? X, Orasan, which is a six-way movement, or some people like six to eight actually. But I kind of we don't focus so much on the direct line because our goal is really moving offline and coming back in. Diamond patterns, hourglasses, butterfly, or like inverted triangles pointing inward. So you get kind of like that monarch butterfly design, two triangles pointing inward, um, or sideways hourglass. So there's a lot of patterns and a lot of overlap, and you can bridge from one pattern to the next pattern to the next pattern to the next pattern. So that alone creates a dynamic of positioning from you to your opponent or opponents. Because what I love about PTK is that the footwork and the body dynamics is trained simultaneously to deal with either one or multiple opponents. No other art, in my personal opinion, that I've watched and trains you off the bat to deal with multiple opponents.
Right. Right. Now I want to know more when it comes to Pekiti-Tirsia. I love the art because it's so versatile. Now, Panatu can, that's the word that I learned, but I know it's another word. What is
Uh,
it?
so the terminology we use in Pekiti is called pangamut. Um,
Pangamut. Pangamut. Now, Pangamut is hand to hand combat, right?
yeah,
And then,
it
then
really means with hands.
mhm.
So in other words, no weapon.
Now, what about ground? The ground. How in depth does Pekiti-Tirsia go? Because I know Pugnamut it goes in depth.
Yeah. So
Depth. But
um,
what about the ground? The groundwork.
so this is great. There's Dumag. Dumag is a Filipino term for wrestling in the Philippines. So we have Pangamut, which means with hands, whether closed or open. We have Hampak, which is an open strike, like or a slap, elbow, inside and outside forearm hacks, finger jabs, throat strikes. Of course, there's you can use a fist, but we usually use hammer fist because our goal is as weapon bearers, weapon users, um, our fingers, right? We don't want these damage because now we can't grip our weapon. If you're in law enforcement, the last thing you want to do is actually punch. Because you punch and break? Now you can't pull your trigger or grab. Now how are you supposed to draw your weapon and use it in an emergency situation? And that's why actually I can understand you should know boxing. Everybody should learn boxing because it's very good. Because it's also good to practice your art against. So understanding the fundamentals of boxing helps you develop in certain things to see things, and then you apply your training from the other martial arts to develop what you need to know and how to protect yourself and defend against people said arts. Bikini takes the concept of we are practicing to fight against other people who might know something or more. Most traditional martial arts are trained against to protect yourself against people who don't know how to fight or competition. The problem with competition is based on like-minded height and weight aspects, weight classes. So me versus Ron would never be seen in a competition or fighting. But if for whatever reason we had to okay to the death, kind of thing. Now it's a different game outside on the streets where my height versus Ron's. It's a different kind of game. I'm not going to try to go toe to toe with him, right? No matter how skillful I am, you know, he's a taller, bigger, stronger dude with longer reach, longer whether punching or kicking to me. So to me, to be able to get in close, I have to risk bodily harm. So it doesn't make sense. That's why I like Kali, because then now things become equalizers, force multipliers, pen, um, you know, uh, phone, anything on your body that you might have, belt, shirt, baseball cap, all learned from using a pen, using a knife, using sword, using stick. Everything comes there. So every time we do our techniques, it's all weapons. This is all weapons to me. I'm using a weapon at all times. So that way, even without a weapon, this is all elements of Pangamut here. This is all your striking that's going to come into play. That's to me still weapon training. There should not be a disconnect. So without the weapon, I'm still the weapon. Make sense?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Now, Dumog is grappling, going deeper, and yes, you should learn that too, because let's face it, fights go to the ground, whether you want it to or not. It's gonna go to ground, but not the way people think. There's that people. 80% of fights go to the ground. So it depends. Did you trip? Did they trip? Did you throw them? Did they throw you? Did you knock them out? Did they knock you out? Did they throw you and you got knocked out on the ground? Did you throw them? Did they get knocked out on the ground? Right? So there's a layer to that, and only a couple of them means there's still an opportunity to fight back. Obviously, you're knocked the F out. You're knocked the F out. You're lucky to get out of that alive, especially if someone wants to do something worse to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Now I want to ask about this. Now, as far as Dumog is concerned, some years back, I think I remember. I think I don't recall whether it's from. I think it was from. Yeah. I learned it from Guru Eddie Hunt, where he was talking about pinching and biting being
Mm-hmm.
a part of Pekiti-Tirsia. So now that like a specific technique, and how in depth do you go into the pinching and biting?
Well, we don't really go in depth about it, but we always talk about it that it's there, right? We have eye jabs, throat strikes, slapping the ear does the same thing, palm heel to the bridge of the nose, things like that, fish hooking the mouth, those are always there. Whatever your structure is, when you like when we those slappy bracelets, you slap on the wrist and they slap over like that, right? So when I talk about or what we call a C grip, and when we're parrying or slapping down, I want to latch.
Mm-hmm.
When I do that, I have grip and grab. So like especially going underneath for the pectoral region here, ripping there, throat, ears, whatever. Grab the ear, peel, headbutt. Aiming with the corner of the head, palm. You can press and really hurt them. Get into the clinch, press your head against your jawline. That right there can make a person tap because they don't expect you to drive the corner of your head right into them. Look at arts like, again, Muay Baran and Lifeway. We shout out to Dave Leduc, the Nomad, right? Phenomenal fighter. And, if you know anything about Lifeway, it's a whole different rule set from Muay Thai. Whereas you keep fighting, it allows headbutts, elbows, everything except the biting, of course. Bare knuckle, or they have like a little thin gauze, and you fight until you can't fight. There's no tap out. If you get knocked down, they have smelling salts. If you can still wake up from the smelling salts, you keep fighting till you can't get back up. It's brutal. It's brutal. But yeah, no different. People are like, oh, Kali doesn't use any elbows. No, we have elbows.
Use a lot of elbows.
We do too.
What about Joe Rogan, right? He said something on his podcast at one point, I forgot when, but he said that you know, a person who's like a martial artist who's like you know, doing like combat, like jujitsu, like combat jujitsu and stuff like that, compared to like a cage fighter. A cage fighter would slaughter, someone who's doing combat jujitsu or something in the realm of maybe like a Kali. Now, in my how I see it is, someone who is a cage fighter is conditioned
Correct.
for that type of endurance, to endure punches and kicks, and to endure arm bars and locks and stuff like that for a number of uh, uh, rounds for a number of rounds for time.
Right.
And now when it comes to like Kali is more about I'm gonna kill you basically. I'm gonna kill you or I'm gonna evade the whole situation. It's self defense. So what do you say? Do you think that if a Kali person conditioned themselves, which Kali has a lot of conditioning in it, if a Kali martial artist conditioned himself and trained as many hours as a cage fighter, and the cage fighter and the Kali person had a fight, who you would think would come out on top?
Well, so here's my thing with that. It really everything's always like subjective, right? So here's the thing: does the cage fighter know Kali too?
No.
Right? So there's the thing: we don't know what the cage fighter knows. All right, here are we doing it in a cage fight, or are we doing it out on the streets for survival? Well, we have to lay these things out. So Joe Rogan is not wrong about that, but he's also not right about it because he's on it. The reality. You take anybody who's been that we've met, me even Frankie even. He goes in. He gets put against a cage fighter, and he's got to use his Kali empty hands versus a cage fighter, and they've had the same amount of years conditioning training. But the reality is, unless you've fought, like if it's a cage fighter's first time fighting, anything it could be either or 50-50, right? Because if it's his first time fighting, but he's been training and Kali guy's been practicing everything and he's even done sparring and they've been doing sparring, it's 50-50. But we're talking a seasoned veteran, 5-time champion kind of, cage fighter. And then here's a guy who's fought a few straight fights and it seems pretty good and he's conditioned, he works out, he's pretty diesel too. Cage fighter's going to win. He's going to own him because the mentality is different on how he attacks. Now you train a Kali guy to be like a cage fighter. Same mentality, same attitude, same approach, same everything. Now things different. People keep saying, "Oh, that won't work in the fight. That won't work here. That won't work there." Oh, why? Because MMA, UFC. No, there's freaking 60 rules in UFC. They can't use certain moves.
Right, but let me cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
Now, Kali's Pugnamut has a lot of counters. A lot of counters. So someone could be punching, you can go underneath that punch.
Yeah.
And
It's Ron. I'm gonna. I don't want to. So my thing is, I'm not trying to be like Kali is the holy grail of all arts. I think Kali enhances every art out there. If you do a form of martial art and haven't done Kali, take Kali. It'll enhance it to an nth degree. At the same time, I believe Kali can stand alone by itself. Some people think, oh, it will never be able to stand against boxing or fighting. I think it can if it's trained with that in mind. So what happens is most people do not train that in mind, and that's why people like Tuan Philip Galinas and Gelinas and and the guys who did Dog Brothers, they're real. Nick Papadakis, these guys they fought and they want to prove that it works and it's real. But again, it's a little bit different. Cage fighter. Again, if you're trained that way, if I'm going to train you to be a freaking rabid dog right away, flip your switch, go and fight and dominate. I'll be more than happy training like that. But it's a brutal mental and physical conditioning. So the average person training martial arts, even in Pekiti, even in any Kali, unless you're trained to be a soldier, that might give an opportunity. Like people are training to be in special forces, training to be a Marine, training to be a force recon in the Philippines. If you're trained to be a soldier or SWAT and you train this religiously before, during, and still to this point, still training your Pangamut material as well as all your other Kali material, yes, you'll have a chance, in my opinion. Because it's fight for your life.
right,
Soldiers understand that.
but I haven't seen enough. I've seen enough Pugnamut to know the boxing, which would some people call dirty boxing, is really high level.
Oh, it
Now,
is. Yeah.
now, I haven't seen enough Dumag to see if to compare it to Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
So would you say I would assume that Brazilian jiu-jitsu is more thorough than Dumag.
And for the most part, some people would say that because if you look at Dumont, like again, it's a generic term for wrestling in the Philippines. But Pikiti, we have a classification called Dumont, and some people say, oh, he stole jujitsu. He took it from Silat. It's like, he's been training. Grand Tuan has been training Tuan Romel since '94. No, excuse me, before that, since he was like 10 years old. He's a year older than me, so 75, so 1985. So he's been training him personally since 1985, and then Dumog started when he was around in like 1990 early. So, he was old enough to do it. He learned enough of the striking and the footwork and the kicking. Then he started learning Pangamut. Then he started learning Dumog, and he's been doing Dumog ever since. And the problem is it's had little traction because there's only a handful of people who do really well with Dumog, and those people are the ones who train together, such as Tuan Ramel, Tuan Nonoy, Tuan Kanishka. From you know, uh, there's only a handful of people I know of in the Bikini that's high level Dumog, and there's people that are developing that now. So, like Tuan Mel has been developing people here for quite a few years, like Mandala Rich Howe from Trent County in Florida, and he's one of the most, you know, he's learned a lot of the Dumog, and he hosts the Dumog camp in Florida, in Melbourne, Florida, every year. Since COVID, I'll be going there this coming August. Again, I went last year from first time. It was phenomenal, 3 days, but it's a great training camp. 30 hours of training in 3 days, and it's a lot. Now, it's a different mentality, but it's the way I look at BJJ in the early days. It was not meant to be a sport. It was meant to snap, crackle, and pop a person. Same thing with Dumog. It was you don't roll Dumog. This is boom boom boom, snap, crackle, and pop a person. It's not it's not meant to be okay till you tap. Now during training, we just like BJJ, just like a lot of things, we see how far you go, and we have to do it in a controlled environment. We can't just snap each other into pieces. Then where are we going with that?
Yeah.
So I think that the material that you learn in Dumog, again, it's up to the practitioner, and if they want to roll and train with someone with BJJ, they can hone their skill and develop. But when I look at Ramel, and he's trained some people who do BJJ have come to the Dumog and they've seen stuff, and they're like, their jaws are dropping. They're like, wow, right? Ron Kozakowski from Connecticut, his son trains in MMA, and he's really good. Jesse James Kozakowski, he's amazing grappler and striker. He's learning some BJJ now to improve his game, but he's fought in AC, and he's trying to go to Abu Dhabi. He's going to be, I have a lot of high hopes for him. He's an amazing guy, and he's picked up some more stuff from Tuan, because Tuan shared some material for Dumog that he didn't know about in terms of grappling. It's helped, and he trained under his father Ron in Kuntao, like Kuntao Silat, or it's Filipino Kuntao, which is similar to Silat. Before he trained in Bikini, so he already has a strong foundation in Southeastern style grappling before BJJ, and he did very well. So, in my opinion, Dumog can hold its own. But again, you have to train it. See, me, I'm late in the game. I'm turning 48. I'm developed. I learned a little bit of BJJ, but enough to make sure I stay off the ground. The Dumog helps me, and I like the Dumog and the approach to Dumog. And so in my head, I blend a lot of the crossover material, so that way I know that okay, this is similar. It makes life learning easier. The ones that are unique, that's what I like. And that drives me to explore that more. You
Gotcha.
know, it's not a dig on BJJ. BJJ is fantastic. You know, I still watch and learn and observe the material that I see from people out there. But again, I don't roll. I don't run Nuri. I'm not gonna say I'm that good at that. But I I know I know enough to help me mitigate the situation against someone who does not know.
Yeah. I was grappling some weeks back, probably like a month or so back. And what I've learned is breath control is important with
Mhm.
grappling. Also, having a strong neck and core is
Yes.
imperative.
Absolutely. You know, and it's not just, working traps or working your rhombus. You gotta, there's a lot of neck exercises you can do out
Mhm.
there, whether you have the hanging chain for the skeleton lift there, or the
Yeah.
one where you bite down on the bit and pull up, or you're
Mhm.
gonna, like in wrestling, they go and BJJ, they roll on their head forward and back on the mat to strengthen the neck. So there's a lot of things you can do. I always recommend strengthening the neck because, a lot of people don't. A lot of people, when they warm up, they ignore their neck. That's why a lot of a lot of arts, traditional arts, they do the left and right turn, up and down, neck circles, stuff like that. We do that too because a lot of people ignore training the neck or working the neck, and then when they get hurt, oh my god, my neck,
Mhm.
right? Oops, no, whose fault is that? You didn't warm. You show up late. You don't warm up. You go full bore. You get hurt, and who's there to blame, right? Then of
Mhm.
course you should stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it. Post training, people ignore their stretching post workout. Best time for the muscles to be stretched is when they're still warm. There's no chance of pull. Right? Dynamic stretching in the beginning, static stretching post. You build your flexibility, and your body learns to um, recover quicker.